choose to worship a creator God who forbade man to actually eat from the tree of knowledge, one which you have obviously eaten from because you're a rather knowledgeable man, why would you choose to worship this sort of deity who would have kept you dumb?
That's a very good question. I'll tell you why it's a good question. I notice it was asked originally by a snake. The answer to your question, though, is this. Do I worship a God who wants to keep me down? Tell you the kind of God I worship. I worship the kind of God who made me in his image and coded himself into humanity, came into our world to provide a basis through his death and resurrection that I could become something that I was not by creation, and that is a son of God. The notion that God is trying to keep us down is actually the original lie.
This is Religious Liberty. In Revelation 14, men are called to worship the Creator, and the prophecy brings into view a class that, as a result of a threefold message, are keeping the commandments of God. Canadian Bill C-367 could send Christians to jail for quoting the Bible. Jeff King, president of International Christian Concern, a religious persecution watchdog, reported on March 16, 2024, that proposed bill C-367 amends the criminal code. This is what he had to say.
Well, I would say, so first of all, it amends the criminal code and it takes away some religious exemptions that protected Christians. So if you're in the United States, we saw the same kind of thing with the Equality Act that the Biden administration was trying to pass. And basically it creates hate speech laws. Some of those have already advanced in Canada, but Christians were protected. They said, well, if they're saying biblical things or if they're saying things according to their faith, whether that's Quranic or biblical or whatever, they're protected. And this is the alarming thing, is that this strips those out. There is no protection. And as always, this is what the dictators and the despots do overseas to strangle Christianity or whatever faith. They say, oh, we have religious freedom, but not in the public sphere. So it's the same game. It's the same game being advanced around the Western world, and even what we saw again with the Equality Act in the United States.
The bill Mr. King was referring to, the Equality Act, prohibits discrimination based on sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity in areas including public accommodations and facilities, education, federal funding, employment, housing, credit, and the jury system. Specifically, the bill defines and includes sex and sexual orientation and gender identity among the prohibited categories of discrimination or segregation. The bill expands the definition of public accommodations to include places or establishments that provide exhibitions, recreation, exercise, amusement, gatherings or displays, goods, services, or programs, and transportation services. The bill allows the Department of Justice to intervene in equal protections actions in federal court on account of sexual orientation or gender identity. The bill prohibits an individual from being denied access to a shared facility, including a restroom, a locker room, and a dressing room, that is in accordance with the individual's gender identity. The Equality Act passed the House February 2nd, 2021.
Are here at this moment when that is not the case in America. As the Human Rights Campaign has declared, we are in a state of emergency, characterized by expanding discrimination and increasing hate crimes. LGBTQ plus Americans, and especially trans youth, are experiencing life-threatening environments. Certainly, our LGBT plus community does not have the freedom to share equally and fully in every dimension of American society. Many live in fear that around the corner could be violence or bigotry or state-sanctioned hate directed at them just for who they are. And this isn't just about discrimination or hate crimes by individuals. State-sanctioned discrimination is spreading across our nation.
Since 2018, 1,035 anti-LGBTQ plus state bills have been introduced as of May 2023. And of those state bills introduced, 105 anti-LGBTQ plus state bills have been passed that have disrupted and deeply affected the lives of the LGBTQ plus community and have changed the political landscape. These state bills are predicated on discrimination under the guise of contributing to the general welfare of the public. The thought is that people in their community are harmed and marginalized by those bills. They've claimed the bills remove access to life-saving and vital health care services like reproductive and gender-affirming care, and restrict the use of public spaces like bathrooms, and promote transphobic discrimination against trans athletes in schools and institutes of higher education. The Equality Act, they say, aims to address these threats to their community on the federal level. By making the Equality Act into federal law, it would amend the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and subsequently provide their community with expanded protections under federal law to better protect them against anti-LGBTQ plus state bills.
Speaking hyperbole here, but if this bill were to pass, would this prohibit the sale of the Bible that teaches these things about sexual morality?
Well, literally, according to how this law is written, yes, it would. This is, PC culture, politically correct culture, gone horribly awry. This is really directly hitting at our First Amendment rights as American citizens. Now the Democrat legislators in this building right behind me, the California State Legislature, they want to tell you how to think, what sort of books that you can read, write, and purchase. It is completely wrong. It is absolutely against our First Amendment rights. And I, for one, will be a vocal opponent against this if it ever hits the assembly floor.
Right. I mean, some of the phrasing here, I read it in the introduction. I want to read it again. They say this includes efforts to change behaviors. I mean, that is the role of parents, to guide their children's behaviors. If they are not allowed to guide their children's behaviors with their religious beliefs, then what rights do parents even have in the state of California?
Which is exactly right. I mean, this is what the Democrats are trying to do in California. This is how bad it's gotten, how far away the California Democrat Party's actually gotten away from even just normal Democrats here in the state of California. They want to tell people how to think, what sort of books they can read, what books they can't read. Remember, this country is founded upon the freedom of expression, and now the California Democrats want to take even that away.
Right. And tell me, I mean, you're in the assembly, you work with these people, I know you respect your colleagues, but who is behind this?
This is the whole liberal agenda. I mean, this is what they've been trying to do now for decades, literally in California. It's just gotten so bad because no one's been able to stop the Democrats in California that now their true designs are really starting to show themselves. This is all of the Bay Area liberal elite groupthink that we're now seeing in the chamber behind me.
God never forces the will or the conscience, but in both, Satan delights. And in the near future, a renewal of such coercion will be seen. Errors that strike innocently against the authority of heaven will soon be brought boldly to the front and given legal backing. The question is, will you and I be ready for the final conflict described in Revelation?
You might be committing criminal offenses as well.
So we'll be preaching about the gospel of Jesus Christ. The Bible says in the book of John, chapter 3, verse 16, that for God so loved the world, that he gave his one and only begotten son, that whosoever, that is any person, doesn't matter if they're black, white, homosexual, drunken, liar, thief, prostitute, whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life.
You're going to provide me with the details, yes or no?
What details are you requesting?
I need your name and your address.
Okay, so can you explain to me why do you need these details?
Pardon?
Can you explain to me? Because I don't understand why.
Okay, currently there's allegation.
Okay.
It's an offence.
So what allegation was it, sir?
Hate crime.
From the very beginning of the great controversy in heaven, it was Satan's purpose to overthrow the law of God. It was to accomplish this that he started a rebellion in heaven. And though he was cast out of heaven, he has continued the same warfare on the earth. But despite all the distractions that are thrown our way daily, constantly bombarding our thoughts with insanity and foolery, I want you to think with me for a moment. Let's just say the former president, Mr. Trump, does win this year's election. This is what he has vowed to do.
Crazy. It's crazy. It's going to bring back the churchgoer. I mean, you have to see. I don't like the charts. When I see charts where they're going in the wrong direction, we don't like that. We're going to bring it back, and I really believe it's the biggest thing missing from this country. It's the biggest thing missing. We have to bring back our religion. We have to bring back Christianity in this country. To save our country. But Christians, they can't afford to sit on the sidelines in this fight. They have to really get out there. They have to do what they have to do, and they have to win. We have to send a message to these radical left lunatics that on November 5th, we're coming. We're coming in numbers that they've never seen before.
The pen of inspiration writes, whenever the divine precepts are rejected, sin ceases to appear sinful or righteousness desirable. Those who refuse to submit to the government of God are wholly unfitted to govern themselves. Through their pernicious teachings, the spirit of insubordination is implanted in the hearts of the children and youth who are naturally impatient of control, and a lawless, licentious state of society results. While scoffing at the credulity of those who obey the requirements of God, the multitudes eagerly accept the delusions of Satan. They give rein to the lust and practice of sins which have called down the judgments upon the heathen. Those who teach the people to lightly regard the commandments of God sow disobedience to reap disobedience. Let the restraints imposed by the divine law be wholly cast aside, and human laws would soon be disregarded, because God forbids dishonest practicing, coveting, lying, and defrauding. Men are ready to trample upon his statutes as a hindrance to their worldly prosperity. But the result of banishing these precepts would be such as they do not anticipate. If the law were not binding, why would any fear to transgress? Property would no longer be safe. Men would obtain their neighbors' possessions by violence, and the strongest would become the richest. Life itself would not be respected. The marriage vow would no longer stand as a sacred bulwark to protect the family. He who had the power would, if he desired, take his neighbor's wife by violence. The fifth commandment would be set aside with the fourth. Children would not shrink from taking the life of their parents, if by doing so they would obtain the desire of their corrupt hearts. The civilized world would become a horde of robbers and assassins, and peace, rest, and happiness would be banished from the earth. Already, the doctrine that men are released from the obedience of God's requirements has weakened the force of moral obligation and opened the floodgates of iniquity upon the world. Courts of justice are corrupt. Rulers are actuated by desire for gain and love of sensual pleasure. Intemperance has beclouded the faculties of many, so that Satan has almost complete control of them. Jurists are perverted, bribed, and deluded. Drunkenness and rivalry, passion, envy, dishonesty of every sort are represented among those who administer the laws. Justice standeth afar off, for truth has fallen in the street, and equity cannot enter. Isaiah 59:14. Here's another card at play. Let's say the current president wins, Joe Biden. We've already seen that work with the Equality Act, which the Canadian Anti-Hate Speech Bill C-367 was patterned after. And on March 29, 2024, Biden announced on the White House website that on March 31st, 2024 would be observed Transgender Day of Visibility. Ironically, this year's observance fell on Easter Sunday, which many Christians saw as a slap in the face, and only added fodder to the fire of white Christian nationalism, fanning the fears of many to push for morality laws. and demands that the state enforce morality in this country, intertwined with real fears of natural disasters and the threat of global warming. Fear and threat will marry, giving birth to what I call their troublesome children, laws of morality, which will inevitably lead to laws and finally the death penalty for God's covenant-keeping people. Now, I can't tell you who or what to vote for, but like my daddy used to say, 6 on one hand, half a dozen on the other. It really doesn't matter. But what I can tell you is this: for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. Brothers and sisters, the ride is about to get rough. You may see and experience some things that may separate some of us. It may even shock and rattle some of us, but draw encouragement from the rock of our salvation. Isn't it written, "Have not I commanded you? Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, nor dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you may go." And again, these things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. May the living God of peace be with each and every one of you.
I believe the Seventh-day Adventist Church is God's remnant people in these last days. And I don't care about being politically incorrect. I just don't care. God's remnant people can be identified biblically. And one of the identifying marks is they keep the commandments of God, all 10. And so I thank God for this church and for what it has meant to me. And my prayer for you is that you will remain faithful to the truth no matter what other people do. Whether that other person is your spouse, your mother, your father, your cousin, your friend, your enemy, do not ever leave this church for any reason. Jesus said in John 6:70, "Have I not chosen you 12? One of you is a devil." Jesus had a devil among the 12 disciples, but the disciples were still the early church. Are you following me? The church does not cease to be God's church because there are devils in it.
This has been another Religious Liberty Report.